Well, good afternoon and welcome back to another live iThemes training event. My name is Nathan Ingram. I'm the host here at iThemes Training, and I'm joined today once again by Michael Moore. Michael's the Associate Product Manager for iThemes Products. He's been a member of the iThemes team well over 4 years now, and a lot of you may have interacted with Michael in the past when he was doing technical support for iThemes Security. So in those years, he answered over 10,000 support tickets, just a few, on lots of security-related issues. You might have heard Michael on previous iThemes training webinars as well. He's got a lot to say, a wealth of information. Today, he's talking about configuring iThemes security for clients. So welcome, Michael. Glad you're here. Tell us a little about what we're going to cover today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I am super excited to be here. Today, we're going to cover how to set up iThemes security to prevent unwanted headaches. Everything from managing the different types of the different types of user security for different user roles, and then also managing those notifications to make sure that your clients don't see any unwanted messages, how to safely and easily make a user available for third-party support members, and then how to protect your client sites against the #1 most used way to hack WordPress sites. So all that and more.
It sounds like a good hour ahead of us today. As always, we invite you to join us over in our chat room at iThemes.com/chat. This is a live training. Michael is actually here, and so am I. So we are happy to take your questions live as we go. We use our chat room for that, not the GoToWebinar questions feature. So once again, iThemes.com/chat. Ask your questions there. And do me a favor, if you do ask a question, just watch the chat room for the next minute or so and make sure I don't have a follow-up question for you. We'll be saving our questions until the end for a good time of wrap-up Q&A for Michael, so looking forward to a great webinar today. I have a link for today's slides in the chat room as well if you'd like to download those. If you're watching this on the replay, you can click the download handout link, and those slides will be downloaded for you. Also, for those of you watching live, there's a replay link that's in the chat. We'll have the replay up in about an hour after we wrap up. So I think that's it, Michael. Let's talk about configuring iThemes security.
All right. So, again, here's a quick little outline of what we're going to cover today. We're going to jump right in because we have a bunch of things to go over. And the first thing, and the reason why I want to make security notifications the first thing that we cover today is because from my time in support and then just talking with people who use iThemes security to, sell security as a service to their clients, one of the issues that they ran into was there is iThemes security, when it is doing its job, it likes to brag about it. It likes to create a bunch of different notifications in a bunch of different locations to tell you how great of a job it's doing. And now, while this information that it does tell you is very important for the person managing the site, it's invaluable to have that information at your fingertips, is not necessarily the best way to communicate that to your client, who in all likelihood is probably a non-techie. One of the stories that I specifically think about when I think about the headaches that security notifications can cause if they're not configured properly is there was a guy who had a client who the client just started bombarding them with emails asking how, I pay you to secure my site. How are you not protecting my site? How are you letting it get hacked? And in fact, she just received a lockout notification in her email telling her that there was an attack, but thankfully iThemes Security Pro was installed and that attack was thwarted. But they didn't understand this, and they thought that, well, if I'm paying you to do security, you should make it so attacks don't happen on my site. And so that created an unnecessary headache and created extra work that wasn't quite necessary. And then there's plenty of stories like that. You might have encountered that in your own dealings with your clients. But quickly, just talk about the different types of security notifications that are generated by the plugin. The first one we have is the admin notice / message sender notice. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a bit. We have email notifications. We have a logins alert for the trusted devices features. There's different types of security notifications in the security dashboard. And then the security logs, we don't often think of that as like an alert or notification, but that does have a record of events, different types of security events that have occurred that, it's great, again, for you, or if anything does happen to your site, it's great to have those logs so you can retrace your steps. But for people who don't understand it, you don't want to run their day by causing them unnecessary concern. And then we're going to just go ahead and switch over to the website, but we're going to go over this before we come back to the sites too. So, but first, let's go back over here, and then let's go and look at all the different places that you or your client can find different security notifications generated by iThemes Security Pro. The first one we have over here. Can you still see my screen?
Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
I was muted. You're good.
No, that's okay. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't tied to that virtual desktop. Okay, so if you have trusted devices enabled, you're going to have your different login alerts that come in over here. If you have any admin notices or update messages, we have the security message center over here, which is currently empty, but that's one place that they can see it. And then also the security dashboard itself also has security notifications over here. And then also the security logs, lots of times will have alerts in here that, again, great information for you, not necessarily the best information for clients to have. So I just wanted to go ahead and let you guys know all the different places that your clients could possibly see this information. That way you can be aware of the different, for lack of a better word, vectors of confusion that these notifications can properly or possibly create. So the first notification I want to talk about, which you can take control of and decide what emails are sent to who. Let's just go to the notification center and talk about email notifications. And let's go through here and let's take a look at the different notifications email notifications that iThemes Security creates. So starting at the top, you can customize the from email. By default, if this is blank, it's just going to use the default email that you have for your WordPress site. Now, a lot of times when you enable a feature, it's going to require a security notification, or if you do enable a notification, instead of having to configure which of your users configure each notification and which users will see that notification, you can create a default recipients list. Now, let's say you only have like 2 admins on your site and you tag team your different sites that you manage. You can just click here and then that will default and send like your daily security digest and your lockout notifications to all your admins. But let's say that you have a client that insists on being an administrator and you don't want them to get those email notifications, just find your user and unselect this and just find your user. And then now those email notifications with sensitive information are only going to be sent to your inbox and not to your client's inbox, creating unnecessary work and unnecessary explanation, not the best use of your time. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to create that default recipient list to help kind of solve that issue. And then the different notifications that we have here, a lot of the stuff is important and you get to decide what information that you want to receive. And one thing to keep in mind is you don't want to create a boy who cried wolf type of situation for you. You don't want to constantly have your inboxes filled with notifications that are security related, because what's going to end up happening is they're going to become just normal to you. So when there is an alarm bell ringing, unfortunately, you'll probably just ignore it because your inbox is constantly being inundated. So with that said, let's talk about the notification type. So we have the automatic updates info, which is in the version management feature, you can set it to automatically update plugins based on whether or not you want them to update immediately, not at all, or after a certain period of time. The database backup notification, the file change notification, which anytime iThemes Security detects a file change, it will shoot off an email. And if you don't set it any different than the file change setting. It will also create an admin notification. So this one can create at least 2 different types of notifications. Enable grade report. This is going to be the grade report feature in iThemes Security Pro, which is this one I definitely, always double check and make sure that this one is only being sent to you, because these are just recommendations. And if this gets sent to your client, they might not understand that that these are just recommendations and these aren't the end all be all of security grades. Inactive users. The reason why this is a good one, especially if you're, let's say, this site doesn't have a million different customers. The inactive users could be a good thing, because every extra user you add to your site is an extra, an added exploit opportunity. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later when it comes to the privilege escalation feature, how to create a single user for third-party vendors. That way, you're not creating all these additional possible points of entries that can be exploited. And then we also have the Magic Links lockout bypass, which is definitely something I would recommend. We'll talk about this also later, because it's definitely something we'll want to enable later in the security settings. And then again, on and on, all these different. But here's the important one. So you are going to, especially if you are hit with heavy attack, iThemes security is going to generate a lot of email. So you're going to want to make sure that you enable the security digest to reduce the number of these types of notifications that you're going to receive down to 1. Because again, with a lockout, there's no action for you to actually do. That's just iThemes Security Pro bragging about how good of a job it's doing for you. But literally, a lockout notification requires no action for you. The action is already done. So go ahead and enable this, and then make sure that you disable the site lockout notifications, because you don't want to still be receiving these along with the security digest. This one, again, might end up creating a boy who cried wolf situation, always sending you emails, always making it just seem like that's a normal routine thing. So again, let's go ahead and disable this and enable the security digest to reduce the number of notifications that you receive. And then another thing cool about the notification center is it allows you to customize the messages that are sent to your client. So let's say that with the Magic Links passwordless login, which is the method of logging in that will allow people to not enter in a 2-factor token or a password, lock down their security, but without sacrificing any of the usability, you can use these tags to customize what they see in the email. So this will be hi, and then their display name. Then you can add any custom text here that you want, any extra explanation text that you think that your client might need to reduce confusion. And then you can add these different tags down here to dynamically pull this information in into the email. So if you wanted to add the site title, usually what I do is just do something kind of like copy and paste like this. And then I'm going to want that right above that copy. And then I'm just going to copy and paste site title. And then replace this right here. And so now when anyone gets a Magic Link passwordless login email, it's also going to have the site title in the copy of the email, in the body of the email. So, when you're going through configuring these notifications, take a look at these tags, because there are a lot of cool things that you can add dynamically without having to manually type this in for every single site. So let's go ahead and save these settings. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the different type of work. Or before we go on, do we want to stop? Is there any questions about notifications that we want to answer before we move on?
Yeah, we can get into some questions here. I'll keep muting myself. Sorry about that. So let's see. Sue had a question. If there was ever a way to edit those notifications, like change what the content of the notification is.
in the notification center, you can change. Like some of it you can't change the copy, but the Magic Lockout bypass, you can change the copy in here. Is that what you're talking about? And then also one thing that sorry, go ahead.
She's saying specifically the iThemes logo is very large.
Oh, no, currently, no. It is something that we do have on, we have, I'm not sure when it's happened. It's something that we do want to do to make all those notifications a lot more customizable.
Yeah, she's saying, having our own business logo there might make it a little more.
Yeah.
And my suggestion, honestly,
so that is something that is absolutely something that we have discussed and had conversations about. And it's something that we do want to implement. I don't have a timeline of when we will implement that, but that is definitely something that we have on the roadmap.
Yeah, very cool. And you can use iThemes Sync, by the way, to send those digest emails of everything that's happening on your website and branded to your business today. I mean, that works today. And I would probably opt for that email rather than individual iThemes security alerts to clients themselves, just personally.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. I think that's all the questions related to notifications.
Okay. And then there's one other type of notification I want to tell you about, which is just your default lockout error messages. So, one thing I've seen people do with their clients is in this user lockout message, they put, because most likely if it's a lockout from a malicious attack, it's most likely a bot. They're not going to see the lockout message to begin with, but so you can actually make this something more readable for your client. And I saw someone put hey, no worries, you've been locked out, just contact me. And then had their email address there. That way, no panic, don't panic. It doesn't necessarily have to be issues. So you can also use these to be a calming effect for your clients when something has gone wrong, like they go in and their username has been locked out. But again, we have a even better way that we can deal with that we'll talk about in just a moment. So, a lot of what WordPress security comes down to is user security, the different types of ways that you can help lock down people's account and help you keep your site safe. So, we have just these 4 different types of users as an example. So a site admin and shop managers have a lot of the same capabilities and a lot of the same privileges. However, you might have a shop manager that you really just, let's say it's a WooCommerce shop, you really just need them focusing on their WooCommerce shop. You might not necessarily want them messing with the managing of the security settings and other site admin stuff. And then we're going to show you a little bit how to prevent, let's say, a shop manager from being able to access and make changes to your different security settings. And then you have your but again, they both have a lot of high privileges. So you're going to want a higher level of security for those types of users. And then below them, you have your contributors and editors. They don't have all the same privileges that your shop managers and admins do, but they can make changes to your site. So again, you're still are going to want to have a higher level of security for them than you would for your customers and subscribers. And that being said, for example, you would probably want to force your site admin users and your shop managers to use 2-factor authentication. And while you probably want to have your customers and your subscribers have the option to protect their accounts with 2-factor authentication, you probably don't want to force it on them. So again, these are different types of users that are going to require a different level of security. And so that's why we created the user groups features. This is to make it easier for you to manage the user security of your site. So, especially when you have clients, you want to make sure what you're enabling, that you know exactly how it's going to affect them. So we wanted to put all of the settings that affected users in one location. And then we also wanted to make it easy for you to apply the right amount of security to the right people. So just in here real quick, we have the contributor users. just as an example. And if you have, first of all, let me tell you about how your users are sorted. By default, they're going to, let's look at administrator because it's a better example. By default, we're going to sort the users into these different user groups by what capabilities they have. So like we just talked about, the administrator and shop manager have similar capabilities. We also have a super user role, which we're going to talk about here in a bit, that again has admin capabilities, but that's how they're sorted based on capabilities. And so within this feature list, so any of your administrator users, you can say, yeah, you know what, I think that my administrator users should probably be able to manage iThemes security. And then I'm also going to want to force them to use two-factor authentication. I maybe don't want them to use the remember devices feature. And then, scrolling on down, these are the other different settings that are designed to affect the user experience. And so let's talk about how we mentioned earlier that we may want the shop manager to be in a separate user group than the administrator user. So let's do that real quick. Let's create a new user group for the shop manager, because again, they have similar capabilities, and we're going to want a lot of those strong security features to be the same, but we may not want them messing with the security settings. So we're going to save that, and that's going to remove the shop manager from the administrator capabilities. Now, if we did nothing else at this point, every shop manager would get caught in this everybody else group. This is kind of a last resort catch-all in case any user is forgotten, because we want to make sure that they are in a role. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a new user group specifically for shop managers. So we're just going to go ahead and name this group shop managers. And then we're going to create that group. And so again, this is going to include every single user on the site that is a shop manager. Now, you can create groups by using individual users, but I would recommend sorting them by user roles. It's a little bit more efficient sorting them based on the different capabilities. So again, with the shop manager, we do want them to have strong user security, but we probably don't want them to manage iThemes security. We don't necessarily need them to see a security dashboard, which we're going to talk about here in just a bit. We don't need them to see the gray report, but we do want them to force two-factor authentication, because again, they can still access our WooCommerce shop, but we don't want them to be messing around with the settings. And since they are a high-level user, we probably want to make sure that we're managing their activity. And so then I do still want to give them the option to use Passwordless Login, because it's a secure, safe, and convenient feature for them to use. We do want them to use strong passwords. We also may want to have their password expire, refuse compromised passwords. And that way, we still respect the fact that they have they can make a lot of high level changes to their site. And if their account were to ever get in the hands of a malicious actor, we want to, it would mean bad things for your site. So we want to do everything we can that we can do to cause friction between a bad guy trying to make it into the site. Because a lot of what security is requiring adding friction, taking away some of the convenience it does to use the site to get a much greater gain in security. So the next thing, let's talk about our subscribers, which for us in our subscriber group, this is going to include these three user roles. So like customer subscribers, let's say that you have an LMS site, your student would probably be there. We don't want to have the same level of friction, the same sacrifice and convenience for them as you would want to have for those people who can make changes to your site. So let's go and take a look at their feature set. Again, they don't need to manage iThemes security. They don't need any of that stuff. We don't want to force two-factor on them, but it is enabled and they do have the option to use it. However, if it is enabled, but you don't want them to deal with it unless they actually go to their user profile page or their account to configure it, you might want to go ahead and disable the two-factor onboarding so they don't see that the two-factor onboarding is a process we use that we automatically show to people once two-factor is enabled to make it easier for them to go ahead and set up an extra level of protection, which is great, again, for our shop manager user group and our administrator user group, but maybe we don't want our subscribers and customers and low-level users to see that. And then taking a look at the user logging, these guys are low-level users. They're not going to be able to make any changes. Let's not tax our database any more than we need to by creating a huge log, with all the different data they have, because your customers and your subscriber group is likely also going to be your largest user group, largest number of users. Again, I definitely want to give them the option to do passwordless logins and bypass two-factor just because of the ease of it. I am not wanting them to have trusted devices just because there's an extra level of complexity there that I don't necessarily want them to have to deal with, nor do I may not want to spend the time having to support that if anyone ever runs into issues with that. And again, they're low-level users. This is a great feature for those high-level users, but we may not want to have that on our low-level users. Password requirements, we're going to get rid of the password expiration date because we're not trying to cause that friction for our customers and subscribers. We are trying to make it easy for them to access our site and make purchases. But I am going to leave this refuse compromised passwords enabled, and here's why. A lot of times, if we have bad password hygiene, we might not ever find out that the password that we're using has been a part of a database breach. And if it has been part of a database breach, that means that, especially if I'm reusing this password, every single password that I use it on is potentially going to be compromised. And this is a great way to add a little bit of value to your customers to let them know, hey, guess what? You probably shouldn't use this password here, and you should probably go update that password elsewhere because it is compromised and hackers have access to it. So we're going to go and save that. So again, just to kind of sum up what we did here is we went ahead and we wanted to separate our shop managers out, even though they have similar capabilities than our administrator users. And then we created a high level of security for them. And then for our low level users, we made that security a little bit easier. We don't want to create that friction for them. We want to have it be a little bit easier. Now, one more thing before we move on from user groups is let's talk about, I know I've heard stories about these clients who are non-techies. They insist on having admin privileges, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want them to have access to to your security settings, because the last thing you need is for them to come in after you and then change all the hard work that you've done. I don't know how many times when I was doing support that I was asked, how did this feature magically get enabled? Guess what? That feature wasn't magically enabled. Your client went in behind you and enabled the settings you didn't want to have enabled. So what do we do in that case? So what I did for my user client on this site, I created a new custom user role using MemberPress. I'm not going to walk through how to do that. It's pretty straightforward, but you can do that on your own time. But let's talk about how we're going to do that with the user group settings. So what I did is I created the super user role, and the reason why I did that is because, hey, guess what? You're better than you can tell your client you're better than administrator. You are a super user. That means you can do everything. But just like the shop manager user role, you can go ahead and create that new user role for them. And the great thing about using MemberPress, you can even take away more capabilities away from them. And then we can create a new group here, and we'll just call it client, because even though it is the super user group, we're going to want to the client's fine as just like the identifier for us. And then we can go through and configure those settings to make sure, even though like they're paying you, they have a right to have access to their website, but they don't necessarily need to cause you extra work by going in behind you and changing these settings that you so carefully configured for them, because the likelihood is they're paying you for a reason. They probably don't know what they're doing, and keep their hands out of the cookie jar. And then before we move forward and talk about the client dashboard, is there any questions about that before we move on?
Let's see here. I had a lot of questions pop in. Let's see if there's any related to just this area. I don't believe so.
Okay. Is there any questions you want to handle now, or you want to hold off until the end?
Let's hold the rest to the end.
Perfect. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is going to be step 4, slide 8 on your cards, but I'm not going to switch back over there, is creating a security dashboard. So here's one way that you can show your work, show them what they're paying for. So what you need to do to create a security dashboard is go to your dashboard settings over here on your admin bar, and then go ahead and just click dashboard. And then let's already have one created, but what we need to do to create a new one is go ahead and create a new dashboard. So we're going to go ahead and start with we'll start from scratch. So we're going to go ahead and just make it our special super user board. And then we're going to go ahead and create that board. And what that's going to do is generate a new security dashboard. And within the security dashboard, we have all these security cards. And what this does is allow us to grab bite-sized information that's a little bit easier to consume, and then add from the security logs and make it a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more readable. And then you can go ahead and add these cards and decide exactly what you want to show your users. So for example, if you just want them to know, like, hey, look, we're going to go ahead and add these lockouts, this lockout card, so you can go ahead and show them exactly how many people you're locked out. And then let's take a look at this. We want them to see that we've had brute force attacks and that we've stopped them. We're probably not going to have them worry about the trusted devices card. They probably don't need to be worrying about active lockouts. We're going to manage that. Maybe we'll do a security profile, and then we can select their user, and then that way they can kind of see, different information about their security user. Password strength is unknown because I created it today, but then they can see, okay, maybe my password strength could be improved, and then maybe I should be able to enforce my 2-factor, and then they can also just kind of see where they last have been seen. Now, security site scans are up to you whether or not you want to put up there. If you do add your site scan card to your security dashboard, this will show a history of it. And most of the time, since you are, if you're here, you're being proactive about your WordPress security. And we're going to talk about here in just a bit about how you can easily protect your client site from the #1 reason why WordPress websites get hacked. These are most likely going to show up clean. And so all these little green things that come up is just a great indicator of, hey, I am paying them to secure my site, and guess what? They're doing it. But again, if something does happen, and things can happen, even if you follow all the security best practices, sometimes things can still happen, and sites can get hacked, and that will display here. So again, personal preference up here, whether or not you want to include that into the security dashboard you're sharing with your clients. And again, they're not going to mess with active lockouts. They don't really need to be worried about 404s. We can have our update summary here, and that way they can see like the different updates that have been triggered using the version management updates. And then, probably don't, this again, kind of up to you. You can have them see what bans have taken place or what not. But after you create this, you can create it, configure it to your liking, all these cards. You can move around, place them where you want. You can change what size they are. You can click this button here to add a user to it. And so I want to add, actually, we can just go by roles, and we're going to make this our super user role. And then now our client is going to be able to access this dashboard. But one thing here is this, if you create yourself a dashboard, this is a great way for you as managing someone's site to come in and get all the important security information at a quick glance. And that's why we have this notifications tab. So if you create yourself a dashboard, it's good to have that here. But if you are going to share this with your clients, for now, to remove that, you're going to have to switch back to the traditional admin notices, which I'm going to show you how to do in just a second. That being said, we are working on a refresh of this, and that is you're not going to have to switch back to the traditional admin notifications in order to hide this on a specific dashboard. But that being said, again, we talked about earlier how the admin notifications, we flip those around and kind of turn those into our notifications for our message center. But if you don't want your clients seeing that on their dashboard, all you have to do is go to your security settings, go to your global settings, and then this find security, hide the security menu in the admin bar, which will be our message center. And once you enable this and click Save Settings, the notifications that are the dashboard notifications, the notifications that are displayed within the back end of your website, go from the message center to back to being traditional dashboards. So when we go back to our dashboard settings, let's go back to those settings not saved. All right, let me go back here. Let's go back to the global setting. I think I must have, I am using a beta version of iThemes Security Pro and a beta version of WordPress on this site. And I know this was working earlier on a different site. So this does work, but of course, when you're doing a webinar, it doesn't want to work for whatever reason. Could be, oh, that went away. So now we should be able to go to our dashboard that we created, go back to our super user. We're there. Oh, the notifications is still there. Should be gone. Okay, well, this does work on regular versions of the plugin and regular versions of WordPress. I do apologize about that, but it is always something is going to happen during live webinars. So, but anyways, this is how you can create a quick place that you can show your work. Also, it's a quick place for you as the site manager to get a quick view of your security health of your website, or the site that you're managing. All right, and so next, let's talk about one of the exciting things that was recently added to iThemes Security Pro, which is the iThemes Security Pro site scanner.
Hey, Michael, before we move on to the site scan, which is incredibly awesome, can we pause for a couple of questions on the dashboard? Okay. So let's see. Mike wanted to know if you could slowly start from the beginning of how to make a dashboard.
Yes, absolutely. So, all right. First of all, you want to make sure that your security dashboard is enabled on the main page of your security settings. And then within the security settings, you can also do the same thing that we showed in the user group, is who has the right to do to create new dashboards. And right now it's just set to administrator users. And so from here, we're going to go to dashboard. If you have an existing dashboard, it's going to bring you to that one. And so to create a new dashboard, we're just going to go here, click the new tab. This is going to show all your all the different dashboards that you have here. If you have multiple dashboards, you can choose which ones you want to make your primary. This one is my primary, but I can click here to switch to the super user dashboard. But to create a new one, let's create a new one. And then from right here, you have two options. You can use the default layout, which we'll do that this time, or you can start from scratch to create your own dashboard. And we're just going to name this one new because I already have one named new, but this one's newer, so it's new. Click the create board button, and then this is going to generate a new dashboard with the default layout. And then over here, you can add or remove whatever cards you want. So if you want to remove a card, hit the X. If you want to add a card, hit the plus. Hit the edit cards to close out of that. And then you can drag and drop these cards anywhere you want to make the dashboard yours. If you want to make this one smaller, you can make it smaller. You can make it bigger. And yeah, was that slow enough? Do you want me to go back through?
Yeah, I think that got it.
Is there?
Perfect. I think that got it. Also, let's see. Heather had a question. Is there a way to get more details when the brute force attacks card shows activity? And also the 404s card.
You can hover over it and then see what like the attacks are. But then if you want to, you can actually change the reporting period and do it custom as long as that information is still in your logs. But to get more information about like the specifics of the like a brute force attack, you can go to your security logs. Just open that up in a new tab. And then we're going to go to all events. And then once we're at all events, we're going to go to brute force right here. And then we're going to filter. And this is where you'll see the entire record of, depending on how long you choose to keep your logs, this is when you'll see a record of it. And so let's say that we want to know more about this brute force attack right here. They were using the admin username, and I have the setting enabled to automatically lock out people using the admin username. I can click more view details from the log. It's going to show me that the source of it was from the login page, and then also what the IP was. And then if you want more information, you can look at the raw details, and then you can get like all sorts of information, like whether, oh, look, they were using Macintosh, Apple WebKit, they were using Chrome. And so, yeah, you can definitely drill in more, but this is a low-level site on a dev server, does not get a lot of traffic, but on some of my other sites that I've hosted, I've seen where one thing that we talked about in the webinars of the past is, sometimes all of a sudden you get hit by like 600 invalid login attempts from an AWS server, and that'll see a huge spike in that. And then, one thing that we're working on for the next iteration of this is, spoiler alert, don't tell anyone, you guys are the first to know, is more using the information that you get here to be able to have more actions that you can actually do. So if you have a high amount of brute force attacks, maybe you want to make sure that you are forcing if you aren't currently, you want to require that everyone's using a strong password and two-factor authentication during that period of high attack. And I hope that answers your question. You have any
great.
more?
Let's go back. If we could just rewind one more step, because I know we want to really focus on that security scanner, because it's really a fantastic addition. It gives us a lot to sell to clients as well with security. But there was a question from Yibo about user logging. Can you go back and just show how to set that up? Yeah.
So a couple different ways. In the security setting, you're going to want to make sure that it's enabled. And then let's just do user logging real quick. Okay, here we go. Configure settings. And then you can set who you want this to be enabled for. And then all of a sudden it's going to start tracking different user actions, such as logging in, logging out, where you logged in from. Did you install a plugin? Did you deactivate a plugin? Did you delete a plugin? So let's go ahead and filter by user logging. And you can see post status was published, and you can see what IP it is. You can see what user did it. You can go in here and get more view more details. It looks like you can see that I published a security card. You can look at the raw details to get the time and date that this occurred. And yeah, so yeah, it's pretty easy to enable. So you can, again, enable it from either the main page of the security settings or from the user groups that we showed earlier.
Excellent. And while we're there on that page with the logs, Heather wanted to know, is there a way to clear the security logs once you've reviewed them?
No, there's not. And I would not recommend doing that. That you want to, first of all, they're not that big, and it really doesn't take up that much space in your database. And in order to populate this information on the security dashboard that we're showing, it's pulling that information from the log. And beyond that, let's say that you need to go back and review. Let's say you don't know your site's been, you reviewed it, but you might have missed something, especially on larger sites, and you do find out that your site's been hacked, then you're not going to have a history of events to go through. However, if you don't like your don't want to have your log stored for as long, you can go into your global settings and then look for your days to keep the logs in the database. You can reduce this number to shorten the length the log is kept. So right now, anything that happened on my site 60 days ago will still be stored in my database. And again, that obviously, like, we make these tools and then you get to do what you want with them, but I would not recommend clearing the database logs. We used to have a button to do that, but we thought better of it because the security logs are an important part of any WordPress security strategy. And if those logs are empty, they're not going to be able to do you any good. So again, personal preference. You can set the global settings that log to 0, and that will get rid of them. That will flush your logs out twice a day as those different cron events. So, but again, that is definitely up to you, but I would not recommend doing that.
Great. All right, let's get into my favorite part now, security scan.
Okay, so the iThemes Security Pro Site Scanner is, we upgraded that recently, and then let's just search for it real quick because I'm not seeing it. Okay, there we go. All you have to do to enable the site scanner is to enable from the main page of the security settings. It's automatically going to check your site twice daily for malware, to check your block list status with the Google Safe Browsing API. And then also it is going to check for known vulnerabilities. So the number one reason websites get hacked are vulnerabilities for which a patch has already been released. If you've been in these webinars in the past, you've heard me talk about update. And the reason why is that updates don't not only include cool new features and bug fixes, but they also can include critical security updates. And so, if you look at the end of the year security roundups that people do, whether it's Verizon, Security, you name your security bureau, and what you'll see is that the number one reason any kind of site gets hacked, any kind of app gets hacked, is because people are running outdated versions with known exploits. And that makes it extremely easy for someone without any technical skill to put that proof of concept of a particular vulnerability into a bot to scan the internet looking for that vulnerability and then take over your site. So that's why updates are so important. And that's why this is so important, because it's going to scan your WordPress plugins, your WordPress themes, and check your WordPress core version and scan for known vulnerabilities. And if a known vulnerability is found, it's going to alert it to you. But that's great, that's automatically checking, but let's do it one better. And if we go into the version management settings and scroll to the bottom, you can enable this automatically update a plugin or theme if it fixes an issue found by a site scanner. So what does that mean? If you have a plugin installed that has a known vulnerability and the iThemes site scanner picks up on it and a patch for that's readily available, guess what? iThemes Security Pro is going to go ahead and update that plugin, patch that vulnerability for you, and protect you and your clients from the number one cause of WordPress sites getting hacked. So between the site scanner protecting you from vulnerabilities, and the way that we set up in user groups with our high-level users, forcing them to use two-factor authentication, which those are the two biggest reasons websites get hacked and taken over, is because someone's not using two-factor authentication, which Google has said protects against 100% of bot brute force attacks. 100%. That means zero make it through. So use two-factor authentication. And between the site scanner, we are eliminating 99.99% of reasons why WordPress websites are hacked without adding any real kind of tax on your site's resources. These are very simple and practical ways to protect, to drastically improve the level of security on your site without sacrificing much convenience for our customers and subscribers, and without making a negative user experience for other people. So without the sacrificing of much convenience, you can drastically reduce the probability of your website being hacked. And that is super exciting. I don't know if you noticed that just by talking about blocking all these different types of attacks out, my voice, my rate of speech accelerates just because I get really, really excited about it. It's really, really cool. And we are going to continue to evolve the site scanner to add even greater levels of protection. But even as it is right now, it's a vast improvement than the malware scan that we had previously. It's a huge upgrade. So yeah, it's super exciting, and do that. And then one thing real quick, I want to show the last thing is just because I think this is the most underused. This is the most underused feature in iThemes Security Pro. It's the privilege escalation feature, which is it allows you to temporarily escalate a single user privilege. And the reason why I like this so much is I can create a single user name support. First of all, let's just show that you have to enable on the main page the security settings. So I can create a single user name support. I can make that support user by default a subscriber. So guess what? Like, if anyone ever gets in control of this account, nothing's going to happen because they're a subscriber. They can't really do anything. That being said, there are times that I need to use let's say that you come to iThemes Security Pro support and they ask you for credentials. Guess what? You can just give them the access to the support user. You can temporarily increase their privileges to administrator for 1 day. You can grab that support person's email address, temporarily add it to that, update it, save it, and now this user is going to have administrator privileges for 1 day. But the great thing is, if you need that to expire sooner, you can go ahead and let's say they just needed to get in and out real quick. You don't have to have it there the whole day. You can just click here, and that's going to clear it. And the great thing about this is, since it does temporarily escalate it to an admin user, they will also have to enter in. They can change the password to their liking after you add their email to it, so they can do the password reset. And then they're going to have to enter a two-factor authentication that's going to get sent to their email address. It's going to add that extra layer of security even while it's been temporarily escalated. And then as soon as they're done, you take that away. And that allows you to create a single user to give to people to help support your website. And that means you aren't creating a new user for all these people, forgetting about them, that have admin privilege users or admin privileges, and they can easily exploit your site. And yeah, that's great. One thing I said we're going to talk about, so I'm just going to talk about it real quick, and then we'll get to questions. I apologize. Is this magic links feature, which is great because this makes it so, like, let's say that someone gets a hold of one of your clients' user's name, and then they use it in a brute force attack, but you have iThemes Security Pro installed, and so they get locked out. But unfortunately, the next time your client goes to log in, their username is going to be locked out, which is good. We want to lock out that username to slow down any kind of bot attack, to give them less opportunity to make that attack successful. That being said, you or your client shouldn't have to sacrifice the productivity of your day to deal with the lockout. So then you can just, if you encounter your username being locked out, you click a button, it's going to send you a link, and then you will, once that link comes to your email, you click it again, and then you're going to be able to log into your WordPress user account, bypassing that lockout while still locking out the bad guy brute forcing your site. So again, it is just a way to, instead of you have to go out and manually clear out every single lockout, using your valuable time to do that, save time with magic links, never have to manually clear out a lockout for your client again. All right, and then what questions do we have?
Very cool. So I just shared in the chat room, I just learned something a minute ago that I did not know, and I've been using iThemes security forever. I did not know you could manually clear the user escalation. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's one thing for you guys to keep an eye out. I'm trying to, every single Monday, I'm doing a iThemes security feature spotlight, and I'm going to work through these different settings and talk about, why do we create them? What problem are we trying to solve? How does it protect your site? Who is that feature for? And then also, you might catch something like that where there's a lot in here. And so that's why we're trying to bring more attention to the features one by one, because there's a lot that you can miss. There just is, because there is a lot of tools in here to protect your site.
For sure. So Karen and Sherry both said they finally understand magic links now. Thanks for that. We do have several other questions here. Let's see. Let's start with Heather had a question. Is there a way to have iThemes security fall back to a different Recaptcha if the one that's in there stops working? Like, for example, she said she had a version 3 Recaptcha that was in there and it stopped working. Is there a way to have it automatically fall back to like a version 2 Recaptcha?
No, there is not currently. And I don't know if that is possible with their API, but that is something I can discuss with our developer, because I'll have a lot better idea about that.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I've had issues with version 3 Recaptchas failing, not just through iThemes security, but through other WordPress plugins as well. And I don't know what's up with that. But for my,
it's been Recaptcha. Google expires those keys without warning, and so and you don't even know why. So sometimes you'll have a Recaptcha key that will last forever for all of eternity for whatever reason, and never gets expired. And then others, literally a week later, they expire those keys for whatever reason, and then you have to go and generate new keys. That's as long as I've been using Recaptcha, that has been an issue.
Interesting. So I'm not crazy. That's, well, at least
you are not crazy
from that source. Okay.
Yeah.
So the other thing, just by the way, we're talking about clients, and just so as best practices, I know version 3 Recaptcha is cool because it doesn't get in the way, but listen, version 3 Recaptcha puts a script throughout your website because it's watching activity, like for bot
Unless
activity.
You don't want it to.
Oh, you can turn that off?
Yeah, and iThemes security you can.
Okay, show me. Because let me tell you what I was gonna say, and then you explain the fix. So version 3 can slow down a site because it's embedding that script everywhere.
Only required pages.
That's why I have always been using the, I still use the I'm not a robot. So right here, look at that. All right, so there's a setting here where you can use it only on the required pages.
Yep. Boom. And like, honestly, even having on all pages isn't necessarily all bad. There's a reason why Recaptcha is available and it's free, because they do get information that does feed their AI algorithm. That's why when you, let's say for whatever reason, Recaptcha 3 fall back and you have to start looking at those different images of the crosswalks, well, that's you're helping them make their self-driving cars smarter. And so they're not really doing anything malicious. And then having it on all your sites means that it can track to see, it will do a better job of creating that score of what is and what isn't bot activity. So having it on all your sites isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, I have no qualms, because there is privacy concerns there, because we don't know everything that they're collecting, but most of it is to improve their AI algorithms. But being able to limit it to only the pages that you want to is also a very good option.
So Heather is saying that include script option is not there, and she's using the latest version.
Are you on type 3?
Yeah, it has to be selected for type 3, Heather.
Because if you go to type 2, it's not going to be there. So yeah, these will change depending on which version you have. I muted my notification. Oh, it's 2. I muted them, but yeah, so those options will change depending on what you have selected.
So how do you, Stacy's wondering, how do you determine what pages are required for Recaptcha?
So if you have login checked, it will be required on login, registration, passwords, and comments. So any of these that are checked, the script will run on your user login pages, registration pages, for password resets and comments. But if you just have it on your login, it's only going to run it on your login page.
Yeah, maybe we should do a Recaptcha webinar. We're getting a lot of questions about that. Mike is wondering, should it be activated if Recaptcha is already installed on a contact form?
No. Okay. If you shouldn't have multiple features running or similar features running in multiple plugins, because it's always going to end up conflicting. However, for all like default WordPress and any WordPress login pages, registration pages, password pages, that Recaptcha is automatically going to show up. So a lot of people will, put some paint on it, but they're still just using default WordPress hooks to use that. That Recaptcha will work on that. We just did some integration work with Lifter LMS. So if you own a Lifter LMS website, Recaptcha will work on every single one of these pages that they create. And that actually, we wrote a blog post about that today. And then we also, if anyone wants to hook into our Recaptcha API, we have an article in our help center that allows any developer to hook into the iThemes security API to make that work with their plugin. So there are options there.
Yeah, and so just in another direction to answer that question. So what I do, for example, I typically use Gravity Forms for a contact form, and it has a built-in Recaptcha feature, and you have to put keys in. I use the same keys in iThemes Security and the Gravity Forms, and it all works fine. And it's only there on the contact form. Gravity Forms renders the Recaptcha. But here, like you see on your screen, on the user login page, user registration, you want a Recaptcha there because that's going to help you greatly if there's a brute force attack.
Great point. That's a great point. Thank you for adding that. I'm really glad you added that.
Let's see here. So Sue is asking, does this add a Recaptcha on the check pages? Is that what this is doing right there?
So if you look at the Recaptcha 3, there is going to be a Recaptcha on those pages. So like the bottom right-hand corner of the page, you can choose where you want a bottom right or bottom left-hand page. I thought that was here somewhere.
You're on version 3. You got to go back to version 2 to have that option.
Okay, yeah. Version 2 or invisible, you can choose which side of the page that you want it on. But in order to meet the requirement of Google's privacy policy, you do have to show with Recaptcha version 3 that it is being used. Do we have any other questions?
Yes. Okay. Let's see. All right. We had a couple of, there's a little discussion going on about IP addresses and lockouts. And then we have one more question after this and we'll wrap up. So Mike was asking, do you have to automatically add an IP address to the ban list, or let's just look at those settings if we could on how does an IP get in the ban list? Because there's a few folks that thought that you had to add those manually. And if a person is permanently banned, should we see that IP in the ban list?
Yes. Okay. So, all right. This is one thing that it can be confusing, and then we do plan on simplifying this. So in the global settings, there's all these different settings that work together to eventually lead up to a ban. And so there's really only one way that an IP ultimately ends into the ban list. And that is because they've reached the threshold for some type of lockout. And there's several different types of lockouts that happen inside the iThemes Security Pro plugin. There is a Recaptcha lockout, invalid login attempt. There is the hitting too many of 404s, so you have the 404 detection enabled, using the username admin. Anyways, lots of different types of lockouts. And so in your global settings, what you do is you say, okay, I do want to enable the ban repeat offender. And then what is the ban threshold? Don't have your setup one. I did that for testing purposes. 5 is fine. And then you have your look back period. So if an IP within the past 7 days have been locked out, that's going to count against the 5 lockouts required to add them to the ban list. And that lockout period is going to be for 15 minutes. So within that, if they do get locked out, they won't be able to log into the site for at least 15 minutes. It's going to take 15 minutes to clear. And you don't want to make this number super, super high, because I've seen what people do in the past, thinking that if they make this 1,000 minutes, that's going to add to the security of the site, when in fact, you are just going to make it, you're going to drastically reduce the convenience of any legitimate user that gets locked out of their site, because that lockout period is going to be way too long. And beyond that, you're not giving the opportunity for the IP, that malicious IP, to continue that malicious activity to end up in that ban list. So that is super important. So we have our blacklist, our block list thresholds here. Do we want people to go to the block list? And then what is our threshold to get them to the ban list? And then we're going to want to look at our local brute force protection settings. That works in tandem with that. So what is a requirement for a lockout? Again, don't make it more than one. This was just me doing this for testing purposes. So the max login per host, that's going to be IP. How many failed attempts can the IP hit before they're locked out? And then there's user, okay? And so we're going to want the user lockout threshold. We're going to want that higher than we want the host lockout. And the reason why is we do want to lock out the bad IP, but if you're under a brute force attack and they're using a legitimate username, we want to give some buffer for the legitimate user to come in after them and still be able to log into the site. So, and then we're going to, excuse me, the number of minutes to remember a bad login. So this is the number of minutes in which a bad guy should be remembered. So this is going to be 5 minutes for that bad login checkback period. And then, again, we talked about the automatically ban admin. So if someone, which this is, I created a Jira card to fix the phrasing of this because it's unnecessarily confusing, because it doesn't actually ban the admin user. Two things happens when someone tries to log in with admin. This is enabled. A username lockout happens with the admin username, and the IP lockout happens. So 2 lockouts from one action, but neither one are actually get to the ban list, and usernames can't get added to the ban list because those are just for authorized hosts. So again, with the Recaptcha, that has its own threshold that you can set for lockouts. And so once it meets the requirements for those lockouts that we just gone over, it will end up into the banned users list. And so this will happen automatically. Make sure that's enabled once they meet that threshold. And one thing that we are working on to make a kind of a more intelligent security system for your WordPress website is, like, on the security dashboard, wouldn't it be nice to have a card to see that different IPs are close to the threshold of hitting a ban, and then also know how quick way for you to identify why these people were banned. Again, it's always going to be from a lockout, but what type of lockout? Did I make that clear, or did I just talk too much?
So you set the number of settings before they get locked out. A lockout is like putting a kid in timeout. Okay, and if you do this again, you're going to get timeout again. But then there's a threshold of how many times do you get put in timeout until you get kicked out, right?
Perfect. Yeah. And then the lockout. Let's go back to this global setting real quick. So the lockout, they're going to see this user lockout message. You've been locked out for too many valid login attempts. Whether or not that is the reason for the lockout, that's just the default lockout message. For a user, the host lockout message is just going to display a white page with an error on it. So, which again, you can customize these and change them. And then once they hit a ban, that means that we actually write a rule, or like if you're using Apache, we're going to write an Apache rule to the HT access that says this IP is not allowed to even come to the site. So when next time they go to your login page, they're not going to see one of these host or user lockout messages. They're going to see a 403 error, which means you're banned. You're done, dude. No more. And if you're using Nginx, it's going to be enforced via PHP. And again, they'll still see that same 403 error, this letting them know, hey, you have no more tries. You've used all your tries. No more timeout. You're going to boarding school, bud.
Yep, exactly. So Sue's asking a question about user agents, and Sue, I'm going to drop a link to the iThemes security, iThemes security help area about that. So I would just recommend. We got to wrap up here. We're over time. So there's a good video that talks about that. Let's see. We have one more question here from Stacy from the beginning. If we choose enable auto updates, where do you choose what to exclude? So can we just show that real quick, and then we'll wrap up.
So let's say that you want to set up your auto update. You can do it custom. Right, and then from here, here's all the different plugins I have installed right now. Like I can set them all, have them all be enabled. I can disable. Let's say I want to select, and I don't want Kismet to update right away. And let's say for whatever reason, I don't want Faker Press to update. Well, let's say a Kismet, we don't want to update for 5 days because we want to make sure that unfortunately, every time I update them, they seem to have to issue an update immediately afterwards to fix the bugs that they introduced with their feature update or their major update. So I just want to wait 5 days so we can just wait for all those bug fixes that always happens when they publish to be resolved before it actually updates. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility here. And then with WordPress 5.5, there are going to, if you go to the plugin page right here, because this is a trunk version, so we should be able to see this, you're going to be able to enable auto updates within the WordPress settings. That being said, it's on or off. So you either have them on and it automatically updates, or it doesn't. And so the version management will still give you a little bit more flexibility in allowing you to you want to stay on top of these updates, but you have this one must-use plugin. They make a really good plugin, but unfortunately, sometimes the initial release of it, for example, Todoist, it's a productivity app I use. They had one update the other day that had some bugs in it, and then literally that same day, they end up having to push 3 more updates to fix the different bugs, the different releases, which that doesn't really matter. It's just a productivity plugin. However, that's happening on my site. I probably want to, I might think twice about letting them automatically update. Let's wait until they can get all the kinks worked out.
Yep, for sure. Michael, really great webinar today. Great information. Appreciate all of your time here. Any final words? Yeah, any final words as we wrapping up?
Yeah. Hey, right now, more than ever, we are committed to listening to you guys. And at the end of the day, we are making these products for you. And I've had some great user or customer interviews, and I've talked with people, and I've got a lot of great feedback. And a lot of what was shared here was because of the conversations that I had, knowing that like we made these solutions to the problems they were having. We just did a terrible job of letting you know that we created a way for you to handle some of the different problems you were encountering. So I have never been more excited to hear from you. So if you have anything on your mind or any suggestions, please email me at mmore@ithemes.com, and I would love to hear from you. I won't always reply. I read every single one of them. If it's a feature request, I will create a feature request for every single one of them. But I don't always have time to reply. That doesn't mean I don't want to hear from you, and I don't think what you have to say is valuable. But now more than ever, we are committed to our iThemes community to make a product that you love and make a product that you deserve. So please let us know what you need.
Absolutely. So again, you can email Michael at mmoore, MMOORE @ithemes.com. I dropped that link in the chat, and he'd love to hear from you. Well, thanks again, Michael. Really good information today. Again, my name is Nathan Ingram. Thank all of you for being with us here as well. Hopefully it was a good use of your time. Those of you in the Freelance Leap Year group, we do have Fly tomorrow. We're talking about systems. And then on Thursday, public webinar, my office hours. You can get all those, sign up for those webinars at training.ithemes.com and ask your questions for office hours there on that webinar sign up. Looking forward to those webinars the rest of this week. All right, from everybody here at iThemes, have a great rest of the day. I'll see you back here tomorrow on iThemes Training, where we go further together.